Welcome to Bat Therapy, mental health through the lens of comics and film. Be a fly on the wall or a bat in the cave, listening in on a friendship built out of a love for talking Batman, comics, and the everyday struggle to achieve mental health and happiness.
We're your hosts, clinical psychologist Dr. Amelia Brown and educator and comic aficionado Keaton Hopkins. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube and social media and find our Patreon at patreon.com/battherapy.
This podcast is about providing education and understanding and is not a replacement for mental health treatment or support. If you're needing help, go to bat-therapy.com for resources.
I got you to watch an anime for me.
Okay. I mean, yes, but it's one that I had wanted to watch for a while, or kind of rewatch. For people who know Fullmetal, you'll understand what I mean. So I watched the Fullmetal before and not Fullmetal Brotherhood. So I have been wanting to watch Brotherhood because I've heard it's a better ending, and it is. But you finally tipped the scales and made me do it because I've been meaning to do it for like 10 years.
I did it. I got Dr. Amelia Brown to watch anime.
Hey, I actually when did I watch it? The other version I watched it, I think in college maybe. And I was like, this is so good.
That's the timing. Yeah, and then you watch this one and you're like, oh, that one's not that good. That one got super weird, which both of them are weird, but this one, it just feels so much better.
This one's also weird. I honestly, by the end, I was like, I feel like if it wasn't just so good of like character development and getting into it, that you could nitpick to death some of the like intricacies of the plot line by that point. Yeah. But you just don't want to because you're enjoying the ride. The other one ended funky fresh. So spoilers. I don't know. You've had time.
It's been out. Yeah. This is like it's been out, what, 15, 20 years now? Like,
You've had time.
You've had time.
Yeah, it's on Netflix, though. It is a commitment. What, 60 some episodes? I mean, they're short episodes and it's an easy binge, but still, it's a lot. But so essentially, we're going to be talking Brotherhood. So this is not the weird one where all of a sudden they end up in our world at the end. This is the other one.
Yeah. Yeah. And they, because the original one completely left out certain characters, like the people from Shing, like they weren't even in
brand new to me.
The original one. King Bradley in the original one was Pride. In this one, he's Wrath. Like
I hadn't remembered that. Okay,
yeah, they did a ton of different things. But yeah, so if you have not seen it, I would highly suggest you watch Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. And I think it's on Netflix and Hulu. It's probably on Crunchyroll because Crunchyroll has everything. But I absolutely love the anime, and it really does fit the theme well with monsters and magic. It's
got both. Yeah.
It has both.
I mean, alchemy. We're calling alchemy magic.
Yeah.
Let's be real.
In their world, it's science. In our world, it's magic. Because one of the rules of alchemy is you aren't allowed to legally transmute gold. Like, that's one of their rules. Yeah. As a state alchemist. And so I'm like, yeah.
But yeah, there's monstery things, there's magic-y things. Yeah, there's a ton of stuff.
And it's centered around these two brothers. They're trying to bring back their mom who had passed away. And so they're attempting to use human transmutation. So basically so those of you who haven't seen it, basically they're trying to bring their mom back from the dead using alchemy, except that's one of the laws about as far as things that cannot be done, but they tried to anyway, and it ended really horribly. Younger brother completely lost his body. The older brother lost his arm and his leg, and they're basically trying to get their bodies back. And in order to have access to the research required to get their bodies back, they go and join the military as state alchemists. And one of the things I think is so interesting about this story is how they don't agree with who they work with at all. They don't agree with who they work with, but they have their own goal in mind. And it's one of those things that makes me think about how a lot of us do things that we don't like because we have a place that we want to reach. It's like the job that you hate, because
Yeah.
you know the job that you want.
Yeah, there are a lot of characters like Mustang. I love Roy Mustang so much. So, like Roy Mustang, he's a military guy. He
Yeah.
through and through.
Career.
Hawkeye,
Yeah.
yeah, career military. Hawkeye, career military. You've got all Armstrong, who's hysterical, career
Yeah.
military, and his sister. And so you have all these career military folks, and I totally agree with you that the brothers, they stand out. And I think they get away with a lot of stuff because Ed, the older brother, he's the youngest state alchemist. They're still kids. So he's what, 15 when it starts? His brother's 13 or 14. I forget how
Yeah,
old,
they're
but
really young. Yeah.
they're young. So I
Yeah.
think they get away with some stuff because they're young. And I mean, they're super talented, obviously, because
Mhm.
they've tried things that a lot of alchemists wouldn't have even been able to attempt. But they are young, they've been through a lot of trauma, and people feel for them. So they definitely get away with a lot of stuff, but inevitably, in different scenarios, they have to come up against the piece of like, you're in the military. You
Mhm.
are in there are certain expectations here and there. But really, I mean, it's near the end, it's kind of fuzzy, like, okay, well, what are we counting as killing or not? But Ed doesn't want to kill. And there are a lot of situations where he doesn't kill. In the end, he starts killing, but he's killing like things that I guess you could technically say aren't human.
Right.
But
Right.
the lines blur a little for him in a few spots. But still, he's trying to go by a different set of rules. But yeah, you're right. There's definitely for him, it's almost like, so, if you're thinking about the military, there are people that go into the military because that's the profession they want. It's the kind of work they want. There have been people who go into the military because, I need a way to be able to pay for college or my education or build a career. And I need a place to be able to do that. And, the military happened to be a place to do that. So yeah, he's
Mhm.
they're definitely less of the military career kind of folks. Before we go too deep into this, though, I do have to bring up what I mentioned to you at one point, which is I was watching
Mhm.
and I love it. It's so interesting. Ed, in particular, I love him. He's my favorite brother. I love their storyline. I love how much he cares for his younger brother. I love all these different things. But then I was like going through it and I was like, this feeling of how much I love this character feels familiar. And I gotta tell you, I love Supernatural and it's a wonderful show. But I was like, oh, you guys must have watched this show because I feel like there's just like certain things that are so similar across, just in
Right.
terms of like the older brother, younger brother, the like dealing with life and death and
Yeah.
being able to skirt death all the time, the dying mother,
Yeah.
um, the elusive father who is also like hunting all these things, all these creatures and whatnot.
It's interesting.
Um,
They came out very close to the same time because I think the
did they?
manga for Full Metal started in like 2001.
When did Supernatural was later than that?
Maybe. I'm not sure. I can't remember when Supernatural started. But yeah, they were close to the same time because I just remember that Smallville and
2005,
Supernatural.
handy dandy internet.
Oh, 2000. It was 2005. It was that late? Okay.
I was about to say it couldn't have been 2001.
Okay. So
Although, like,
yeah.
I think so many things aren't as old as they are now. Okay, so the manga and everything wasn't out as long as I thought, but beforehand. But I gotta say, there are some similarity, and it does not detract from my love for Supernatural. But I could not. So also, if you love Supernatural and you have not watched Fullmetal Brotherhood, you'll probably like it.
I've been rewatching Supernatural. It's been
Mm.
my go to sleep show at
You go to
night.
sleep to Supernatural?
Absolutely do. Absolutely do. It's pretty solid. It's pretty solid. Yeah, I definitely do. Um, but yeah, I did see the similarities when you did mention it. I was like, oh God, that's
Many.
really interesting. Like the brother that's they're trying to get their bodies back. They're trying to get their dad.
Just the
They're
protective
always,
nature of the older brother, and
yeah, definitely.
the younger brother is like not just a normal human.
Yeah,
This one's
definitely.
metal. This one's literally in like a metal armor.
Yeah.
versus having demon blood in them. But
It's
yeah,
so
there's just a
cool.
lot of stuff.
The thing about Full Metal too, it holds up. Like when I rewatch Full Metal Brotherhood, I'm like, Jesus, this came out like 15 years ago and it's still
It's
so like
good.
15 or 20 years ago and it's still so damn good. Like it holds up so well. And yeah, so one of the things that really, really sticks out to me about this show is they actually find a way pretty early on that they can get their bodies back.
True, yeah.
They find out really early on because they introduced the concept of a philosopher's stone. A philosopher's stone is something that's made of human souls, and it has the power
Which they
to,
didn't know at first.
right.
But they find out pretty quick.
Yeah. And it has the power to give them back their body, but they're just like, no, we're gonna we truly learned from our mistakes. And we are not going to do that to get our bodies back. And the entire show is basically their resilience in sticking to that. They have so many opportunities, so many chances, and they're just like, no. And what stuck out to me there is how I think it's really important to have your own code, right? To have your own code, because otherwise, being in that particular military, where it's extremely easy to just be completely indoctrinated and completely lose your way and just follow orders no matter how wild it is, they fight against that the entire time because they have their own personal moral code that live by that supersedes everything that's in front of them.
Yeah. Yeah, you also have these interesting storylines where they're the younger next generation, but they're the first of the next generation because they're so young. And then, like Roy Mustang, Hawkeye, Armstrong, Hughes, all of these other characters they're actually trying. It's very interesting because you learn more and more how they're actually trying to make up for things that they regret having done
Yes.
within the military.
Yes.
So you start learning all of these different things about the country that they're in. And there was there was a genocide that they were tasked to do of another people nearby. And in areas that they now inhabit and whatnot. And you have these groups of people who that's not what they were in the military for. They followed orders even though it was not consistent with what they believed in.
Right.
And they're now trying to figure out, how can I make my life worthwhile in a way where, how can I possibly try and even begin to make up for some of these things? And I think that's a story, whether someone's been in the military or not. I think a lot of people can relate to, where, as a therapist, I've worked with a number of people who have done really awful things. Or sometimes people are caught up in things that they've put in their minds as, this was something really awful that I've done. I mean, there are, of course, different levels of the kinds of awful things that we humans do. We're not perfect by any means, but there really can be this understandably huge struggle of, how do I move forward from this? How do I make sure that this thing that I've done, that I acknowledge is so terrible, how do I balance that out? And so, like, Roy Mustang in particular is one that really, he focuses in on literally trying to change the country. And at first he seems like just like a narcissistic douchebag.
Yeah.
But you actually get to see, okay, like, he's kind of full of himself in some ways, but there's actually a huge heart under all of this.
Lot. Right.
And he's trying to repair some really awful damage that he did in the name of his country.
And it's so this show, and the manga was first, but the anime is but it really does have this huge theme of both redemption but also forgiveness. And you definitely have your characters that, like, you see them working through forgiveness, like Winry and Scar. Like you see them working through forgiveness, but then, like you said, you have characters like Armstrong, you have characters like Mustang that are trying to forgive themselves and move forward, which honestly can be far more difficult than forgiving someone else, because a lot of the times we hold ourselves to a higher standard than we hold others. If someone hurts us, it's easier for us to forgive them than for us to forgive ourselves for hurting someone. Right. And I think that is like forgiveness is a huge theme. And the way that it just all hits, because you find out like Scar made a mistake and killed Winry's parents. But then on so many different occasions, he ends up saving the lives of the characters that we love. Same thing with Armstrong, took part in that genocide, and now
he left.
Yeah.
So he's struggling with the fact that I didn't stay and fight against it. What he did was he was like, I cannot be a part of this.
Yes.
But that meant he left. And so for him, the struggle was, I didn't do anything to stop it.
Right.
I just
He
didn't
pulled a
participate.
Switzerland. Right. He pulled a Switzerland and just like, hey, I'm just going to stand over on the side.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, it was one of those things where and then you have Mustang, who is just simply like, I did absolutely terrible things. I completely screwed up. I hate myself for it. And now I'm going to do everything I can to change this country for the better. Because when I was following those orders, I realize now how messed up that was. And also, there's also this idea of how people can be manipulated by people above, right? King Bradley was giving out all the orders, and they're like, "Oh, that's our king. That's our leader. He's the ruler, and we have to follow orders." And it's like, yeah, I get it. You do. And authority can be very important. The chains of command can be incredibly important. But at a certain point, you have to be able to say, hey, this is my personal code, and that's not okay. Right?
Yeah.
Our country could use a watch of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. That's all I'll say about that. This is not a political podcast, but our country should watch Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood.
A few other countries, but
a couple other countries in the Middle East.
Yeah. There were moments where it felt a little too real, to be honest, with things going on right now. But like, you see parts where the military starts turning on one another, which actually is wonderful to see. You're able to see essentially people in the military turning on the leader because they're staying consistent with why they're in the military. They're staying true to their belief system, why they're there. And in doing so, they cannot follow this leader. Leaders there are so many things that can affect how we follow and what decisions we make. There's so many things, even a person acting like they belong somewhere, or wearing a uniform, or, something that suggests that they belong. Well, all of these things, even something as small as that, can influence what we do. And there's a lot of pressure. In the military, you're meant to be one of a unit. And I mean, the alchemists are a bit different. And so a lot of the characters we're talking about, exception of Hawkeye and a few others, but a lot of the people we're talking about were alchemists. And so they were almost like specialists that came in and also did probably some of the nastiest work more directly.
Definitely.
And so I think that's why you see a lot more reverberations for them later on, especially given what alchemy is meant to mean and how it's meant to be used. But, they are trained to work within this system. And unfortunately, the system actually, the more you go into this show, the more corruption you see that's in it, a long-standing corruption. And there are a lot of things people thought were true about what they were there to do as a country, or what the country was about, what their leader was about, that they find out is not true.
Yeah.
And those are very hard things to accept. And yeah, these folks were put in really, really difficult situations. You know, you were talking about that forgiveness, and I do think there's a lot of forgiveness, and maybe not even in some ways there's pieces of forgiveness, but I think maybe even more so it's about how do we not let the damage that's been done to us or by us, how do we make sure that the damage that's been done doesn't reverberate into further damage? How do we stop the ripple effects from that and start a healing process? And part
Right.
of that is we have to find a way to move forward. So I think you really see that so the Ishvalans are the ones that the genocide was done against. So you
Yeah.
have Scar. He starts off just like he's killing all the alchemists he can find.
Every
Uh,
single one.
he's
Yeah. He's
raging.
on a warpath. Yeah.
He's on a warpath. By the end, he's working alongside of some of the very alchemists that he was trying to kill. And you get this sense, I think they do a wonderful job with this where, yes, I think there's like some forgiveness kind of stuff in there. I think there's a lot too of like acceptance in certain ways, but essentially Scar, I think, is one of the characters that most kind of describes this process. But essentially, if I continue down this path, we just keep killing each other. We
It's
keep
a
hurting
vicious
each other.
cycle. Right.
It keeps happening back and forth. And he really understands this with Winry
Hmm.
when it comes to a head where he actually didn't mean to kill her parents. You know, things were happening at the time, but he's essentially realizing, like, okay, well, I'm taking revenge. Yes, this woman right here is allowed to take revenge on me because of what
Hmm.
I've done. And he's just playing it out and realizing it is the revenge so important to me that these ripples just continue and continue? And instead, he actually is able, with some other Ishvalans, to find a way forward where a lot of these people who were a part of the genocides before, once all of the war and everything in the show, in the manga, is done, are actually coming back around and trying to help essentially repair what damage they can, acknowledging that they're the cause of it. And these are, I mean, this is making me think of, I mean, in history, like I have, you know, my ethnic background, there's a lot of like former Yugoslavia. There's a lot of tension and things that have gone on over there. There are just so many stories across this entire world about destruction and harming other groups of people and this, that, and the other. And it's hard to see how those reverberations can stop. Um, yeah, it's a tough storyline, but it's got a lot of hope in it at the same time.
It does. And I think it's because so many of these characters, they realize that, hey, I can either stay stuck in the past or I can move forward with what I have. Right.
Which is
Like,
not an easy thing to say considering some of the things that have happened to some of these people.
absolutely not. Right. Like Winry lost her parents and that was devastating and she was hurt. But I think she even realized Alphonse and Edward are my family now. Like, I still have a family. And it's one of those things. It's not just, I still have people that I love. I still have people that depend on me. Right. Also, and I mean, same thing. It's like, hey, these people, they committed some of these characters that we love, they committed atrocities, but they also have people that care about them. You know, Hawkeye and Mustang. Mustang has his whole squad of guys at this point. And then, of course, when Hughes dies, now Mustang is also trying to work past revenge to the point that Hawkeye is like, I'm not gonna let you do this because I see the path you're headed down, and it's the exact same path of revenge that we've seen Scar
Well, and
go down.
remember that Roy Mustang actually has a deal with her. If you see me going down a point of no return, shoot me,
Yeah,
kill me.
because he's that dangerous as the
He
Flame Alchemist. Like, he just
I know. The
So
whole show should be
badass.
about, he's so badass. He's like the
so
most
awesome.
he's not even seen the gate or whatever, blah, blah,
Right.
blah, that the brothers have, but like, oh my God, like
Yeah.
he's, whoa. Yeah, I am incredibly humbled by the ability of people who have had such just unimaginable harm
hmm
and um trauma done, especially done to them by others. I'm humbled by the ability for some people to be able to say, you know what? The path forward for me, I need to not add to this by succumbing to what was done to me and reflecting that back out to others. I mean, that's a very difficult thing to do, to say I'm taking a different path.
I'm gonna be better.
There are, and here's the thing is that we, especially if we're not living in a place where these things are actively happening, like in an active war zone, for example,
hmm
it's so easy for us, I think, to simplify humanity and think of ourselves as not capable of these sorts of things. And, oh, those things are so rare, but you know what? There's a lot of ugliness to what we are as humans.
hmm
And if you have been unfortunate enough to be in situations where you're having to face that head on, you have to stare it in the face and figure out, how do I continue to live in a way that is worthwhile for me and gives me quality of life, even though I know that these things are possibilities out there. And that is just so hard. And so in the show too, what's really cool also is, okay, Roy Mustang, love this character. Hughes, the most lovable guy in the entire show. Scar, you learn to really appreciate it. All of these characters that you really love, if you look in their back history, yikes. I mean, these are people where, let's simplify it to like a scenario a lot of us know. Like, it was World War II, they'd be sent to some Nuremberg trials, right? Like,
hmm
there's really serious stuff, awful, awful things that these people have done. And they're also these wonderful characters you love about. And I love that because it's forcing you to face the fact that being a human is very complicated, and it's not as simple as a good person only does good things, or
Right.
if someone does terrible things, they're only a bad person. You have these complicated characters, and they're having to sort through the fact that, like, how can I be a human that is worthy of continuing on and being with other people when I've
hmm
done some really terrible stuff?
Right. And it's one of those things where you say, okay, no one is perfect. And I feel like a lot of times people say that, but they don't realize that's a hell of a standard for you to set for yourself. No one is perfect. Like, perfect. Like, that is a lot to even compare. Like, that's a bad thing to even try and compare yourself to, right? Because it's not just that no one is perfect, it's the other thing. Everyone messes up.
Yeah, I do want us to not reduce down, though, the fact that there's a difference between, like, I lied to my friend, I
Right.
stole $50, and I
Yeah.
murdered a bunch of people,
That
right?
is true. That is
So
true.
I
And
do want to be
I was
careful
saying,
that
like,
we're
as an
not
overall theme for the
right,
show.
right.
That's what I meant. Not
And
like, yeah.
yeah.
I
And
think,
so,
yeah.
I know to
I
be clear,
stole from Walmart, but I've never killed someone. You're right. They're not the same.
and I also,
Definitely.
I just
Right.
want to acknowledge that. And I also want to acknowledge, like, hey, we have listeners, and some of you have probably done some of the things that we're listing off as like, hey, these are like next level things. I've worked with people who have killed people. I've worked with people who have tortured people, who have abused folks, and we've probably all interacted with folks, whether you realized it or not. And some of us, I think, have been privileged to not be in situations where you see these parts of humanity. And I think it's this careful balance that, once again, I really appreciate the show doing, where on the one hand, I think there are these dark parts of humanity that we really like to ignore if we can. And on the flip side, that doesn't mean you're not responsible for your actions. And how, if I've been in those situations and I've done or had done to me some of these terrible things, how do you keep moving forward in a way that, like you were talking about before, I can come back to the core values that I want to live by, even if I did some things that really stepped outside of that. Because Roy Mustang is not someone who believes in genocide. You can tell that this is something that was inconsistent with what he believes in, and yet he did it. And this happens for people at in small ways and in giant, huge ways like this one. I mean, it's tough because it's hard to move forward when there are just these like large ways that we've hurt one another. And I think this show also does a good job of showing that too, in ways where certain characters will acknowledge that they want to move forward, and in moving forward they feel guilty because in moving forward I'm able to move forward and there are people that can't because of the things I've done, and they're just working through all of those just really tough human experiences.
And they also show everyone masking it too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like you see Armstrong flexing and laughing, and he's just this upbeat, joyful kind of person. But deep down, it's like that situation where he did not intervene has been eating at him and has always been eating at him. And it's right behind the surface. It's right behind the surface. Same thing, Roy Mustang and his cool ways and his smooth looks and his badass alchemy. But it's like that he is tormented. He's tormented inside. Like, and that's the thing with these characters. Even the Elrich brothers, they're funny. They have so much fun. But at the same time, they are so deeply scarred, not just from losing their bodies, but from trying to bring back their mom and ending up creating something super heinous and terrifying and scary, and just adjusting to that while also being children in an extremely adult environment.
Yeah. And really, I think with Ed and Al, I think it helps too because they start the story with an easier it's still a tough human experience, but an easier one to relate to, because you start with Ed and Al, where they've gone through so much and they're trying to move forward. But it's also one of these things where there's really this sense of, I mean, granted, they were young children, but they did these actions and here were the repercussions. So they did things and then they were harmed because of those things that they did. And then they're trying to, okay, how do we undo some of those things? And then you start learning more about these other characters where it's more complicated, where their actions actually harmed more of the people around them. And I think it was a smart way actually of going through this because, it gives you a chance to really care about these characters who act in big ways and don't really think everything all the way through, but are these like charming younger characters. And then you see everyone else connecting with them. And then Ed and Al start learning about how complicated the people around them are. Like I remember, I think it was Hawkeye who was telling them, our plan is to get a better government in place and then turn ourselves in.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really cool conversation, like an exchange between the characters where you're really starting to just really get the complicated layers add on more and more and more as the show goes on, I think in really brilliant ways.
Well, and it's not just that. I think it's not just that, but like they also even though they did terrible things, they are better people now because of how they worked through that guilt and set a goal of, all right, I did that. It's messed up. It's not okay. How can I move forward and make it better? I know I can't take it back. And it's horrible that I can't take it back, but how do I at least essentially atone for these sins? And I think that's literally a line that Scar says. He talks about the idea of atonement.
Yeah.
And it just sat heavy because with him, He's just out for revenge because
And I was actually just thinking about Scar because it's tricky because I think those are very honorable things to try and do. So what can I do to try and move this world forward despite what I've done? And then a part of you as a human is like, yeah, Scar, take him out.
yes,
You know,
no,
there is a part of
absolutely. When
there,
he
I
was
think,
going around taking out all those alchemists, I was just like, I get it, bro.
yeah,
I
you
get it.
get it.
Yeah.
And you see how it eats him up more and more and tears away his humanity more and more to where he's becoming one of them and becoming swept up all in all of this. And I mean, it all of these interesting things that a person has to work through when these experiences have happened,
Mhm.
where you can understand that desire for, I was going to say justice, but really like vengeance, eye for an eye kind of thing. And then Scar is a really good representation of just like how far down that dark hole that can take you, where he becomes something so unlike his people. And you see him reconnecting with some of his people later, other Ishvalans later, and completely shifting what he does. And you never get the sense, I think he's got a close eye on people. Don't get me wrong. Like, he's still
Yeah.
Scar.
Yeah.
But it's a very interesting change that you see as people are moving forward with a lot of that. And it really is, I think, too, with Scar, there's this really tricky thing about when terrible things have happened to you, it's understandable to, or I mean, I guess this is my opinion, but it makes sense that a person would want vengeance or revenge or have all these angry reactions, want to do something about it. And sometimes are appropriate measures for that, to be clear.
Mhm.
Uh, and being careful because you can get so swept up in that piece that you lose what's left of yourself.
Yeah. And what's so interesting about him, and it was something that I just loved, is his two arms. The one he
Oh, yeah.
always used was the
Mm-hmm.
one for destruction,
Mm-hmm.
not the one for building. And by the end, it's
Mm-hmm.
like he actually uses that other arm. And at that point, it was like, okay, that's what healing looks like, because he was just stuck in destroy mode. Like, I'm just on a warpath for destruction. I'm not trying to build anything back up behind me. It was Sherman's March to Sea
Mm-hmm.
on State Alchemist. Like, I'm just
Yeah.
taking them out, I'm cleaning house. And then all of a sudden it's like, actually, the people that are left, they need me. I can still do good in this world, even though I still have this anger. I still have this hatred that I have not let go, and I'm still taking it day by day. By the end of that show, Scar is still very much a work in progress, right?
Yeah.
He's still a work in progress. So is Roy Mustang.
Mm-hmm.
Armstrong's probably still thinking back on what he could have done differently.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing. All of these things leave us, no pun intended, with scars. All of these things leave us with scars. All of them leave us with hurt. And all of us simply, what you try to just move forward in the best ways you can. And that outside of war, that could mean choosing new hobbies, making sure to have good coping mechanisms, helping the people that you can, right? Like, because yeah, Full Metal, it's a great story, but the reason we relate to it is because we have different problems in other areas and things that we look back on that we're just like, damn, I really wish I could have done that differently.
Yeah.
That
Well,
eats at me.
and what I love about a lot of the characters, but particularly Ed and Al, is what you started with, which was essentially talking about how they there's something they desperately want for themselves. They want their bodies back the way they were before they made this big mistake, and they're not willing to do it by any means necessary. They've learned that lesson for themselves, and I think that that's one of the things that a lot of the characters in this show learn is that you have to be careful about by any means necessary. There might be situations where you need to do that. There are certain situations where people are putting it all on the line to fight, but they're fighting for what they truly believe in. Versus these other things where it's like, there's something I want out of this, or there's something happening. And I mean, let me really pay attention to what choices I'm making, because I know what ripples can happen. And, Ed and Al, they're not going to use these souls that have been sacrificed in order to get their bodies back.
Right.
And I
That's
think
their
that that's
code.
a really, that's their code. And they
Mhm.
stick to it the entire time. And yeah, it's a nice way of just showing how we can move forward from these terrible things and really be focused on change, or on fixing something, or undoing something, or making it better in some way. And I mean, essentially, they don't say it out loud, but they're essentially saying, we'll accept things as they are if we have to, because it's not worth everything. It's not worth sacrificing everything. We have ideals that we're going to stick with. So I like that balance for them, where it shows that balance of, you can focus on changing things, making things better for yourself, and also make sure you don't get so caught up in a desperation for that change that you end up losing something even bigger.
Absolutely. And the thing is too, it's like there's this interesting idea where a lot of the people in the military think of the Elric brothers as naive,
Yeah.
when in reality they're setting a moral example. It's because it's because even Mustang, there's so many times he thinks of the Elrics as naive. It's like, it's not that simple, and it might not be, but at the same time, the Elrics never leave from there's right and there's wrong, and there isn't an in between here, versus Mustang, where he's been in it and he's in this system, and he's like, in order to change the system, it's not that simple. And so Edward and Mustang butt heads because of that. But at the end, Mustang respects the hell out of Edward
Yeah.
because, yeah.
Yeah, and that respect, I think, starts building fairly early on. So
Mhm.
there's also one scene that I remember too, where this is reminding me of, where Ed, once again, people are like, Ed, you gotta be willing to kill people to get this thing done. And he's not willing to do that. And I forget specifically who he's fighting in this, that, and the other, but I think he was fighting that alchemist who was on the wrong side. I forget his name, but um he ends up with a really bad injury,
Mhm.
and he uses a part of his soul essentially to heal himself enough where he can get out and then get medical attention. And he says something along the lines of, if I'm going to stick with my beliefs and I'm going to not kill people essentially, then I've got to learn to make some other tough choices. And so, sticking to our ideals is sometimes really, really tough choices. But I do think there's a naivete that they have. And as they go, they mature in some of their values that they have. And the interesting thing is, like, they actually have these respectable values from very early on that are very impressive. And as they go, they see how complicated the world is, and
Mhm.
they have to make some really serious choices at certain times. Like, I'm not going to use a philosopher's stone to get me where I want to go, or I'm going to take a few years off my life with my soul to heal myself. And if I'm willing to have mercy for people and not kill them, I gotta accept the fact that sometimes that's not gonna go my way.
Or even, I mean, what Edward does at the very end when he's like, I'll give up my alchemy. I
Mhm.
just won't use it. I'll just,
Yeah.
as much as this means to me and as much as I love it, and it's been my whole life up to this point, I'd rather give all of it up than use a philosopher's
Then
stone
use
to
a
get my
philosopher's
body back.
stone, or his dad sacrificed his life. Although I found that kind of annoying because his dad just died at the end of the episode anyway from, like, using up his own stone. So I was like, Man, you should have just let him sacrifice
You should have
himself.
just let him do it, right? You should have just
Come
whatever. Yeah.
on. But yeah, he
Thin
absolutely,
line there, right? Yeah.
I guess Ed didn't know, whatever. But
Well,
yeah,
it's interesting because on the flip side of that, at the end, Dr. Marco, who had a Philosopher's Stone, he comes back and he's like, Mustang, if you're promising that you're going to try and help this country, we can use this Philosopher's Stone to
Yep.
give you your eyesight back. And it was one of those things like, okay, because it is there.
And so, yeah, Roy is more of a, let me do the practical, logical calculation of these things.
Yes.
And the souls are already lost. Let me use this thing so that I can do more theoretically to help. I also liked in that scene that the doctor, he to say so that, we can give back and and he stopped himself. Essentially that like white savior complex thing, and was touched on that a little bit, where it was like, I cannot speak for these people and what they would want to happen, but I have done so much harm that I would be so grateful if you would let me heal you so that you can help me try to find a better way.
Try to
And so
atone, right.
I thought it was interesting that they hit on that just to scotch. But yeah, it would be interesting to see how things went from there, because hopefully the Ishvalans get quite a say in how the rebuilding process happens. And yeah, it would be interesting to see what would happen from there. But
Definitely. Well, and it's the thing that still really sticks out to me as far as this show's theme and how everything kind of wraps itself up. It is basically this ongoing theme of life goes on. Like life really does go on. Like, because it's like at the end of it, the Ishvalans that are left, they're like, we're gonna move forward. The people from Shing, they're like, okay, this was crazy. We're going back home. The Elrics are like, we got our bodies back. Let's go home. Roy Mustang is like, all right, we got the bad people out of office. Let's fix the country. And so they got themselves out of the cycle that they were stuck in, essentially, and move forward.
I think though that is a major theme of this, is that yes, life keeps going.
Mm-hmm.
That can be brutal. It can be brutal, the fact that life keeps going when these awful, terrible things happen, whether you participated or it was done to you, and it is nice that in the end there is this upliftedness to it, where, hey, here's a way of moving forward where the death, the destruction, the harm, it's not undone. It's happened, and people are now more fully aware of what that destruction was and what happened. And with that awareness, they're choosing to try and figure out a different way to move forward from here.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Thanks for nerding out with us. I'm clinical psychologist Dr. Amelia Brown.
And I'm educator and comic aficionado Keaton Hopkins. Check out my TV and movie reviews on YouTube at Team JBS. Check out our website at bat-therapy.com, our Bat Therapy YouTube channel, and follow us on social media. And don't forget our Patreon page at patreon.com/battherapy. See you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.